Right, greetings all, hope this finds you well as always. It's now time for a latest update from the machine shop, where we're up to and what we're on with. It might be a bit of a shorty this week again, because I've just had another week over in Cumbria mucking around with vintage tractors, but stuff's still been going on, and we're definitely getting there, slowly. Where there is, we're not quite sure. Anyway, right, first up, the latest job of Brian's. I may have pointed a camera at this piece of steel last week, and I honestly can't remember. What we have here is this billet of steel is going to become 4 of these lock nuts. These are off the brake adjusting turnbuckle on a Black 5. We need 2 for Eric, and we're also going to replace the 2 that are on 806 at the same time. So what Brian did last week was he turned this lump of EN3 down to the major diameter, and also machined a little spigot on the end of it, so he had something to hold it in the dividing head. And then he spent most of the day, and it's not exactly the most stimulating of tasks, but it's a strangely satisfying one. He spent most of the day with it in the dividing head, over there, on the Fritz milling machine. He spent most of the day with it in that, and he's basically turned it from a round into a hexagon. Tomorrow's job is to drill the 2.200 inch hole up the middle of it. It's actually, the core size of the thread is actually, I've actually worked it out at 2.5 inches. We're leaving ourselves 50 thou there, just to give us a bit of a clear up. And then he's going to drill that hole up the middle of it. We'll then part or slice it off into suitable width slices, face them up to thickness, and then at some point we'll thread them. The minor entertainment is that 2 of these have to be threaded with a conventional right-hand thread. 2 of them, because it's a turnbuckle, have to be done with the left-hand thread. We've got the inserts in stock ready, so we just basically need to, well, put the threads on and actually make that look a bit more like 4 nuts. So anyway, so that's the job Brian's been on with today, and what we'll be finishing off tomorrow. Right, in other bits and pieces, but we've got something else to look at. Yes, we do, of course we do. Right, quick job that's come in today. Could we have 2 new hornstay bolts? So there's the old ones. What's wrong with these is they're loose in the holes they should be in, and there is a lump of EN16 which has been rough turned to the major diameters. I'm doing my usual head-to-head of, sorry, that box actually from that end. Don't ask me why these are different lengths, I don't know, but they are. I'm doing my usual turn them head-to-head out of 1 billet. The reason I do this trick is because if you take your first cut on this side, if you then flip that billet over in the chuck, you've got a nice big shoulder here to push up against the chuck jaws. That stops the steel sliding in the chuck. And so, because it can actually do that, even though a 3-jaw chuck will have a very tight grip on that billet, it can slide in the chuck jaws quite easily. But if the chuck jaws are butted up against a vertical face, it can't go anywhere. It also makes doing these angles here much easier. I mean, even if these had a non-counter sunk head, even if they were cheese head, I'd still do them this way because it's actually quicker and more efficient. But it also makes doing these much easier because all I've got to do is replicate that taper, that angled head there onto there, put a thread on that, finish turn that to size, put a cross-drilled hole through that, rinse and repeat on the other end, 2 bolts. Then all you got to do is chop them in half down the middle with a bandsaw, tidy up the heads, because you can hold them on that diameter there to tidy them up, and bingo, job's done. So that's another little quick job that's coming today, and when I get onto a lathe tomorrow, I'll do threading, because at the moment the threading on the Harrison's out of use. There's an issue with some of the gearing in the saddle, so we need to look at that at some point. So I need to see if I can get onto a lathe tomorrow that's you got threading working on it, and then we'll get them finished. So there's another little quick job. In ongoing rectification, we're rapidly reaching a conclusion. There's very few bits left on the floor now. The only major lumps left are the inside expansion link, which is actually completely ready to go now. Barry's completely rebushed that. New trunnion bushes, new bush on the bottom of it there, completely new thrust strings, and that is all ready to go. That can go back up into the engine. The only reason it's still here is, to be brutally honest, it's an absolute swine to fight it back up into the engine, so we've sort of left it till last, if I'm honest. And then there's a few other bits and pieces, but they're mostly a few small combination levers, a few other small links and whatnot. The traditional random rubbish which collects on any flat surface in a machine shop, including, for some reason, a brake block. I'm not quite sure why that's there. As I said, I'm off this week, and that turned up in my absence. So I'm sure on Monday somebody will be able to explain to me why we've acquired a brake block. Oh, a can of leak detector, floor detector spray. That's nice. Right, another thing I waved a camera at last week was these axlebox crowns, and they are now done, finished, finito, ready to go. I showed you the setup I used last week and also the tool holder I made. Well, last week I got the big 5/8 radius here in them machined, each of them exactly the same, because the way I was using that fixture, well, to be honest, if the crowns are the same, this radius has to be the same. And then this morning, all I've done is hand scrape in the 1/8" radius onto the other end. And then I've also just gently gone over these with the gauge, just checked them against gauges for both ends. And then also done a bit of, the cutter had left a slight lip on the innermost edge of the radius here. So I've just removed that with a hand scraper and just titivated them, so they are now all ready to go. They will go into now, this is where somebody who knows a bit more about carriages may be able to correct me. It is, they are for a pair of Fox bogies, which I understand are to go underneath the Clestory, whatever it is, dining car, which is currently under restoration at Pickering. So I don't actually know, honestly, what company it is. I know it eventually evolved into the L&ER, but I don't know which individual one it is. Sorry, I just machine bits from them. I don't know the history of them. So anyway, they're done and ready to go. And so they can go out of here and go and do something useful towards the end of the week, probably either tomorrow or early next week. And then the next job onto that, apart from, well, assuming whoever did that, the volcanic acceleration outside hasn't brought me a fresh job. The next job onto that will be probably a 860 Super E-Treader, which we're going to finally get finished, so that can then go to Ian Riley's and get some more work done. Well, it can then go on, Riley's then have it on hand to start thinking about fitting it into the boiler even. So anyway, folks, a bit shorter than usual, my apologies. As I said, I've been over in Cumbria looking around with old tractors in the pouring rain, so not much has been happening here this week. Well, no, that's not true. I haven't been doing much in here this week. There are other people, though, who will definitely be making up for my slacking and gallivanting around. So anyway, folks, I hope you found this educational, informative as always. Take care, and I'll see you around.